All right, ready to dive in. Today we're looking at ways to boost your English speaking skills. You guys sent in a YouTube video, a beginner English learning podcast, and I had some interesting ideas.
Mhm.
What do you think, expert speaker? Ready to break it down?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always interesting to see how they present these concepts. We'll pull out the important stuff, add some insights, and hopefully that'll help you guys on your learning journey.
Sounds good. So the first tip was about narrating your daily life, all in English, talking about what you're doing, your surroundings, even your feelings. They even gave example questions to get you started. Pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
But what's the reasoning behind it? Why is that so effective, do you think?
Well, think of it like this. You're basically immersing yourself in English, even without being around native speakers, you know? It's like you're creating this constant English environment for your brain.
That's a good point. So it's like constant exposure, even if you're on your own. Makes sense. The video also mentioned something I've been wondering about. Is it better to actually speak out loud, or is it enough to just, like, think in English? They seem to favor speaking. What do you think?
It's kind of like working out. You can visualize lifting weights all day long, but you won't build muscle unless you actually hit the gym.
All right.
Speaking out loud, it uses your vocal cords, helps your pronunciation, lets you play around with different tones and rhythms. Thinking in English, it's a great first step, for sure. But speaking, that takes it to another level. It makes it feel more natural.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, speaking is what really cements it all. Okay, the next tip they had was all about pronunciation and how crucial it is to imitate native speakers. They gave that example, what a beautiful day, and told people to really pay attention to the accent, tone, rhythm. But honestly, some sounds just trip me up. Got any tricks for those tough ones?
Of course. Mimicry is super helpful, but sometimes you gotta break down those tricky sounds. There's this thing called shadowing, where you basically listen to a native speaker and try to copy them as closely as possible, almost like their shadow. Another method is using minimal pairs. Those are words that differ by just one sound, like ship and sheep.
Interesting.
Focusing on those subtle differences, that's how you train your ear and mouth to produce those sounds correctly. And online pronunciation dictionaries, those can be lifesavers, honestly.
Shadowing and minimal pairs, huh? Got to write those down. It's amazing how breaking things down can make it feel less overwhelming. Speaking of manageable steps,
Yeah.
tip number 3 was all about vocabulary. They suggested learning new words daily, using dictionaries, apps, reading lots of different stuff. They even mentioned picking material based on your interests, like sports, science, business. But isn't it enough to just recognize the word?
You've hit on a key point there. Recognizing a word, it's just the beginning. There are different levels to knowing a word, right? Like there's recognition, where you understand it when you see or hear it. Then there's recall, where you can actually pull the word from your memory when you need it.
I see.
And then there's production, which is actually using that word confidently when you speak and write. Active vocabulary building, it targets all three levels.
Okay, so it's not just about cramming in as many words as possible, but really understanding them and using them. And choosing materials you're actually interested in, that's genius. I bet the vocabulary sticks much better when you're passionate about the topic.
Absolutely. If you're genuinely into what you're reading or listening to, you're more likely to remember the words and use them naturally.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, last tip from the video was about practicing with native or fluent speakers. They suggested language exchanges, conversation clubs, online communities, even finding tutors or mentors. But gotta admit, the thought of actually speaking with someone, it's a bit intimidating. What if I freeze up or mess up a lot?
It's totally normal to feel nervous, but think of it this way. Every conversation, it's a chance to learn and improve. Native speakers, they're like a gold mine for authentic language. They can help with pronunciation, teach you idioms, even give you insights into the culture. And the best part, nowadays, there are so many ways to connect with native speakers, from online platforms to local groups. You just got to take that first step.
You're right. It's about pushing past that initial fear and realizing that every mistake is a learning opportunity. And with so many ways to connect with native speakers, there's really no excuse not to practice. This has already been so insightful. Where do we go from here?
You know, it's interesting they really focused on speaking in that video. And it's important for sure, but language learning, it's like a four-legged stool, you know what I mean?
Okay, I'm following.
You need all four legs: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Got to have them all to really master English.
Ah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Miss one leg and the whole thing could topple over. So how can we make sure we're approaching it in a balanced way then?
Think of it as cross-training for your brain, right? Don't just practice speaking. Spend some time listening to English podcasts, watch movies, TV shows, read books and articles that you find interesting. And don't forget about writing. Even if it's just jotting down your thoughts or keeping a journal.
So diversifying those activities, got it. But are these skills actually connected? Do they, like, reinforce each other?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more you listen, the better you get at picking up those pronunciation nuances, how native speakers actually talk, and that makes you a more confident speaker. Reading well, that exposes you to more vocabulary, different grammar structures, and that naturally feeds into your writing and speaking. It's a cool cycle, really. Each skill helps the others.
A symbiotic relationship, I like that. They all work together to create a well-rounded language learner. They talked about consistent practice in the video, but how much is enough? Is there a magic number of hours per day?
Haha, that's the question, isn't it? It really depends on your learning style, your goals, and how much time you realistically have. Don't try to do too much at once. Even just 15-20 minutes each day. Focused practice, whether it's vocabulary, listening to a podcast, having a short conversation, that can add up over time. It's about those consistent habits, not burning yourself out.
Consistency over intensity, I like the sound of that. Takes the pressure off. Like those small daily deposits in your savings account. They eventually add up. But let's be real, mistakes happen. How do we handle those moments when we feel lost or discouraged?
Remember, mistakes aren't setbacks, they're like stepping stones.
Stepping stones.
Yeah, they show you what you need to work on. Don't be afraid to make them. Embrace those stumbles. Learn from them. And remember, language learning, it's a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate those small victories along the way.
That's encouraging. So it's about changing our mindset about mistakes, seeing them as opportunities to grow, not failures. You know, the video didn't really talk about technology and language learning.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. How can we use those tools effectively?
Technology, it can be a game changer for language learners. So many resources right at your fingertips. We've got apps that make learning vocab fun, online dictionaries with instant pronunciation help, tons of websites and platforms to connect with other learners, even native speakers. But remember, it's a tool, not a replacement for real-life interaction. Use it to support your learning, not replace it completely.
Right, finding that balance is important. Using tech to help, but not relying on it completely. The video focused on individual tips, but I'm curious about the social and cultural side of learning English. Is it more than just making new friends, like they mentioned?
Oh yeah, definitely. Learning a new language, it's like opening a window into another culture, another way of thinking, seeing the world. You start to understand their humor, their expressions, the values behind their communication style. It goes way beyond just grammar and words.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. Like, language becomes a bridge to connect with people on a deeper level, to understand their perspectives and experiences. But with all these tips and techniques, I think it's easy to forget about motivation. What role does that play, in your opinion?
Huge. Motivation is the fuel, right? It's what keeps you going when things get tough. Before you jump into grammar and vocab lists, think about why you're learning English. Is it for travel, career, personal growth, or just the fun of it? Having that clear purpose, that's what gives you the drive to push through those inevitable challenges.
So it's not just about how you learn, but why you learn. That intrinsic motivation is so important. How do we keep that motivation strong when we face setbacks or those times when we feel stuck? What advice would you give to someone feeling discouraged?
Set realistic goals. Don't try to learn everything at once, right? Break down your learning into smaller steps and celebrate each milestone. Find the joy in the process, whether it's a new word, understanding a grammar rule, or having your first conversation with a native speaker. Language learning, it's a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's not about the finish line. It's about enjoying the journey. Speaking of challenges, though, are there common pitfalls learners should be aware of? Things that could hinder their progress or lead to discouragement?
Yeah, there are definitely some common traps people fall into. One of the biggest, I think, is the fear of making mistakes. So many learners, they get stuck on being perfect, so scared of sounding silly or being judged, they don't even try to speak.
Oh, I know that feeling. Like putting yourself out there, it can be scary.
Right. But remember, mistakes, they're a part of learning. They're not failures, they're feedback. They show you what to focus on, how to adjust. Embrace those stumbles. Use them to get fluent. The more you speak, yeah, you'll mess up sometimes, but you'll learn so much faster. It's all part of the process.
That's a good way to think about it. Mistakes are like opportunities to grow. And it's important to remember, everyone learns at their own pace, right? Comparing yourself to others, that's a recipe for feeling down.
Exactly. Focus on your own journey. Celebrate your wins, big or small. Remember, everyone's learning path is different.
Speaking of support, I imagine having a learning community or a language partner that can really help with those feelings of being alone or discouraged. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Surrounding yourself with other learners, it's so motivating. Sharing resources, practicing together, celebrating milestones, it makes the whole journey more fun, more fulfilling. It's like having your own cheer squad.
Love that. And besides the social aspect, having someone to practice with, bounce ideas off of, get feedback, that can really speed things up. It's like having a built-in accountability buddy.
Mm.
But sometimes, even with all that support, learners can feel overwhelmed with all the resources and materials out there. What advice would you give to someone feeling lost in all the options?
I get that, especially these days, right? Information overload everywhere. Having a clear learning plan is key. Before jumping into all those resources, take a step back. Define your goals, figure out your level, see where you need the most help. Then you can pick resources that actually match your needs and how you learn best.
So it's like having a map to guide you, keeping you on track, not getting lost in all the apps and courses.
Exactly. And remember, your plan isn't set in stone. Be flexible, try things out, see what works best for you. That's the great thing about language learning. There's no one right way. It's all about experimenting, personalizing, finding what clicks for you.
Making it your own.
Mm,
But let's not forget the fun. We talked science, strategies, challenges, but learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore, right? How do we make it more enjoyable?
definitely. It should be an adventure. Think outside the textbook, find creative ways to engage with English, watch movies with subtitles, listen to music and sing along, join a language exchange group, meet people from different cultures. So many possibilities.
It's about finding those activities where you forget you're even learning. When you're so into it, the learning just happens naturally.
Exactly. And the more you enjoy it, the more you'll stick with it. So make it fun, make it yours.
You know, expert speaker, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. Practical tips, motivation, embracing those mistakes, finding the joy in it all. So much great information.
It's been great exploring all this with you. And remember, this is just the start of your adventure. There's a whole world of language and culture out there waiting for you.
As we wrap up, one final thought for you all. What's one small step you can take today to use these ideas in your own learning? Could be anything, like narrating your day in English for 5 minutes, downloading a language app, trying out a new game.
Or maybe calling up a native speaker friend for a quick chat. Remember, every journey starts with a single step.
So true. We're rooting for you every step of the way. Keep learning, keep exploring, and never give up on your language goals. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.